We're in a dangerous situation. Donald Trump is not somebody whose words you should dismiss if you are talking about him going in and taking care of a situation. If Iran falls, this is the turning point against Islamic extremism.
Are we one moment away from an Iranian Islamic militant, scorched earth version of World War III? Here's Glenn Beck reacting to President Trump. Let's watch this clip together, then talk about it. But first, hit subscribe in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch.
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it. And we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination. Some of the protesters were killed through the stampeding. I mean, there's so many of them. And some were shot. We get a full report. I'm getting an hourly report, and we're going to make a determination.
We're in a dangerous situation. Donald Trump is not somebody whose words you should dismiss if you are talking about him going in and taking care of a situation. For a guy who does not like war, he goes and he uses our military strategically, quickly. But again, everything in the world is on the edge, and he's kind of in a tough place because he has said, you start killing the protesters and we're locked and loaded. The president blows all of the credibility he's had around that he's built up because he is a man of action, a man of his word. How is he going to react? I don't think that it's going to take much from President Trump. If we withdraw our support or we remain silent, it's going to end up the way it did under Biden and Barack Obama, and that only strengthens our enemy at times. It'll make them stronger, at least for a short period of time, and it will become very, 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 very dangerous for everybody involved, and make the people that want to go march in the street the next time a little more hesitant, because this time we said something. If Iran falls, this is the turning point against Islamic extremism. They no longer have this huge pile of money and this giant proxy that is there. And you will see things begin to turn because of this. I think it's why the left this weekend started coming out against Hamas and saying it's a terrorist organization. They haven't been on that bandwagon for a while. And it's because the Persian and Iranian people are standing up and saying, we're not saying we're against this regime. We're against Sharia law. We are against this oppressive idea that Islam is a government. It can be a religion, not a government. And it's oppressive. And they are proving everything that the left has been cozying up to is poison. And it is so important. I don't want to do it through force. I don't really want us to get involved. I want the people to be able to do it. And anything that we can do to strengthen them with our voices and our support online, all of us should be doing anything that we can do with speaking out for the Iranian and the Persian people and standing up for them to be able to be free. We should do. And every day that goes by, it's either going to get stronger or weaker, and it's going to happen quickly when it does.
So let's slow this down, because if you miss one piece, none of this is going to make sense. You see, on October 7th, it wasn't just an attack. It was actually something far deeper. It was a narrative reset. Almost immediately, Israel became the oppressor. Radical Islam became context, and Iran stepped forward. But here's the part still people aren't processing. This wasn't symbolic. Iran launched hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israel. So I'll ask you to pause for a moment, because this is where most people get it wrong. You see, yes, those missiles, with the help of Iron Dome, were intercepted, and there was a miracle, little or no damage. And that sounds crazy, like a success story, but it's actually created a much bigger question, which I'll come back to in a moment, because then Iran was hit back by Trump with the B-2 bombers when he struck Fordo. And for the first time, Islamic Sharia regime in Iran was publicly humiliated. And that matters. And in a second, I'll explain why that humiliation might be more dangerous than defeat. But first, remember what Hamas called this war. They didn't call it a resistance. They actually called it the Al-Aqsa War. That's the Dome of the Rock. That tells you everything. This wasn't about borders. It was about the Temple Mount, about religious supremacy, about rewriting who is God's chosen people, and by force. And now we're in a fork in the road. And this is the point where nobody wants to sit with. For the first time, the people of Iran, the only country in the world governed explicitly by Sharia law, are saying enough. And here's the unresolved question. What if the protests don't work? You see, if they fail, the regime is cornered, and cornered regimes don't de-escalate. So ask yourself this, and don't answer it yet. If Iran believes it's losing internally, what does it do externally? Because that leads to a terrifying follow-up. What if Iran goes scorched earth? What if missiles are launched at America, targets in America? What does America have? Do they have an Iron Dome? Now hold that thought, because this is where history starts lining up in an uncomfortable way. The prophet Zechariah writes that after Jacob's trouble, the nations will come up against Jerusalem, all of them, and they will fall. Zechariah 12:9. Notice the order. First, they come up, then they fall. And right now, the world is coming up against Jerusalem. That's why neutrality is disappearing. That's why the world is polarizing. That's why militant Islam is no longer being treated as just another religion, but an ideology, a governance that can no longer coexist with peace. Now, circle back to the earlier question. Why is Iran's humiliation dangerous? Because regimes built on religious absolutisms can't survive exposure. They either collapse or they escalate. And that brings us to the real question. And that is this the final war? Maybe. But here's what it definitely is. It's a recognition moment. Recognition that peace doesn't come from moral confusion. It comes from truth. And from a Jewish perspective, redemption isn't about domination. It's about the world recognizing the God of peace, the God of the Torah. And it's not just, again, I would say even therefore, it's not just the Jews, but through the Jews. And whether people admit it or not, this is already happening. The people of Iran are saying it themselves. They understand radical Sharia isn't just oppressive. It's existentially dangerous. It could end the world in an instant. So the question isn't just what Iran does next. The question is what to do next. Do we continue to pretend that this is just another news cycle? Or do we put our hearts in motion? We pray for peace. We act with moral clarity, and we recognize that this chapter of Tanakh isn't theoretical. It's being written right now. We're in the final chapter of the Torah. I ask you, whose side do we stand on? Thank you for watching. Shavua Tov. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done that already. And check out my channel. There's lots of other talks on this topic and many other topics. And let's keep in touch. Shalom from Israel.